Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of my map making series. In the preliminary episode I outlined all of the different things that could be in these episodes because I feel like when it comes to map making there's a wide range of things and the content in each episode could be quite varied. Now I can't remember if I actually outlined what I wanted to do in this episode, but the plan that I had in my head was to explain the whole Gold Rush map in great detail, talk about how it came to be, how I came up with the ideas, also go into each of the different systems that are in the map and explain how they work. And I recorded the entire episode of me doing that and I felt like it was just ever so talky and boring, and so I decided to change it up. What we're going to do now is I'm going to briefly explain how I came up with the idea, how I put it into action a bit as well, but mainly I'm going to be talking about how I want to rebuild this map because I have plans to make it better. I want to rebuild the arena, I want to make it modular, and also rebuild a lot of the systems that are on the map. For example, the player respawners, the shop system I think could be improved. And so in this episode I'd rather skip the explanation of how I built the whole map, just talk about the basics and get straight into rebuilding it, which I can do. I'm probably going to start on the shop system first of all, so I'll be able to show you how I'm building that and how it works. So first of all we're going to start off with how I came up with this idea. So when I'm trying to dream up ideas for PvP maps, I generally think about what it is, the core aspect of the game, not about how it looks or what's a part of it, just how it will play out. And what I wanted to do is create a game where the team who go in front and get on top, whatever that system is, in this one I decided to use score, that they would sacrifice the amount of strength that they has as a team to do that. So if you go in front, it kind of means that the other team gets stronger and then it's more likely that they will go in front. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because some PvP games become quite one-sided quite quickly, and I wanted something where it sways back and forth. Now, did I achieve that? I'd probably say no. Overall, this map turned into something a little more just casual and fun than a game that constantly sways back and forth, but I feel like maybe I could change it and try and make that happen. So the way I decided to implement this was by creating the score system. You'd go to the middle to get points for your team, and I came up with the idea of zombie pigmen dropping down. You kill them to get nuggets and then you deposit them, and so that way you would create score. And so the way that I would counteract that by making the other team stronger when one team is dominating gold is by having these XP spawners on either side. So by visiting them you get XP which you can use to buy upgrades in the shop to make you more powerful, to use spells and buy the teleporters and things like that, to make your team stronger overall. So when one team is dominating the middle, it means that they're going to have less people focused on XP, and the other team can choose to go and do that, and so then they get stronger, strong enough to come back to the middle and take it over again. So when I rebuild this map, I'm going to try and make the things in the shops more effective, come up with some new things as well. A lot of these are item upgrades, and I feel like maybe we should do more things with potion effects. I've seen some interesting ideas from people like Simply Sarc, who I should put a link to in the description box as well. He's been coming up with tons of stuff and really inspiring me lately, and he also helped me build this shop system here, so I want to say thank you to him for that. And I might use one of the things he's come up with in this map as well, but we'll talk about that when the time comes to it. So the shop's making more powerful, going to the middle is scoring points, and it didn't quite play out like that, but we could possibly, when we rebuild this map, make that happen. But one of the other reasons that I want to rebuild the map is because of how it looks and how the arena is laid out. I feel like the arena kind of forces the game into a particular style, whereas if you laid the arena out slightly differently, you could really turn the game on its head and make it very different. So let's point out the dropper box down here. A lot of the other team, I've noticed, tend to come over to the other side's droppers and try and kill people before they put their gold into the dropper. Now, this is kind of counteracted by the fact that you respawn up here and it's a short distance round to the dropper, and so it's easy for the orange team to defend when blue people come over here. Now if we change the layout of the map, let's say that there is no stairway here, that you have to go around to this side, and that this bit in the middle is the way that you get to the gold area, then things become very different because the two teams will fight over the entrance to the gold area, and when you're in the gold area, the part where you put your points in, over here, the dropper, that is isolated from anywhere else, so it becomes quite a different game. You'd probably have to team up a lot more and protect the players that are taking the gold up to the dropper. So when I rebuild this map, I want it to be modular. I want to space these things out better to give people more room but basically you could come into this game, rip out all of the arena that you see here and rebuild your own one with everything still intact, and so the game will work just fine. And then that way we could have a game with multiple arenas, meaning if you get bored of one you could move on to another, and it would freshen up the game and really introduce some new strategies and a new style of gameplay. But anyway, going back to the beginning, when I came up with the idea and once I had the concept in my mind, I sort of broke down a few of the different things and saw what was possible or not. I knew it would be possible to create a scoreboard system where you could deposit gold into there, and that was a very important thing to do, because if you have something you're not too sure about, then you could end up building an entire map and you get to that bit later and realise that it's not possible, then you've wasted your time. So I made sure that everything would be possible, and then I started to build the arena. Now I think it's important once you've got to that stage to start building it to see what it looks like, because it motivates you. I found that once I built this first part of the arena, the central bit here, that I was very much motivated to continue working on this map, building the rest of the arena. So I built the outside bits, and then I got to this dropper over here, and that was the first system that I think I worked on. I built the entire system, and then it took me quite some time to iron out the faults with it, but I got the basic system working straight away, so that was good. And then after that I built the shop behind it with Sarc's help, and then once I had those two things in place, it basically meant that the game was almost ready to play. The arena was built, two of the key systems were in place, and so I started work on the lobby behind it, just so that there was enough things there to play, like the randomizer and the respawn tubes, which we did have different ones of. And so when I got to that point, I started to test it. I invited some people to help me out. There were lots of problems, but once we got them ironed out, and we started to play this game, I could see what it was going to be like and that it was fun, which is very important. So that is basically like a recommendation, is what I'm saying. If you're going to be building maps, do it in an order where it will motivate you. Get the concept in your mind, start building it, and then when you can see that in action, it's really going to motivate you to get to the next step. And so when I had people in here, playing it and saying it was fun and it worked, we didn't have an end game system, there were problems and things, but the fact that we were playing it really kind of motivated me to go to the next level, and that's when I really started to dig in, fix all of these respawner tubes, get all of the pre-game lobby and the end game systems in place, which are very important. So just as a general tip, if you are going to do some map making and make your own game, do it in an order where each thing that you do is going to inspire you to go to the next one. So with all of that talk about how I came up with the idea and put it into action, another reason that I want to rebuild it, apart from adding more variety to the gameplay and improving the shops and things like that, is the pre-game lobby is pretty awful. It works for playing with friends, you can log in and the tools are here to help you put players into teams and control that sort of stuff, but it's very much operated from a perspective where you're all talking to each other. Now on a public server, no one's talking to each other, they're just logging in to play, and it becomes very chaotic trying to organise teams because no one knows what's going on. And I think the only way that this is really going to be possible is to do that with a plugin. So at the moment what I'm trying to do is find someone, I'm talking to a couple of people who can make a plugin, and I want this plugin to keep the game as vanilla as possible. So when I build all of the pre-game lobby stuff, it's going to be compatible with vanilla servers, but for those public servers it's also going to be compatible without any modification as well. So if you want to put this up on a public server, then you run the plugin that goes along with it, and you don't have to modify anything that's on the map. So when I speak to those plugin developers more, I'll know more about that, and I can start to adapt all of the pre-game lobby around that. But the first thing that we're actually going to do when we rebuild this is rebuild saplings. I don't know what you call this, but this is for when the player spawns and joins the map. You spawn somewhere in this region based on how the game works. You fall down onto the tripwire, and then it changes your game mode and teleports you to the next place on the map. And so what I want to do is rebuild this, because I think it's a little bit outdated and there are some flaws with it. It can be broken, and I want to update this with one that works entirely off of command blocks. So here we are in a brand new world. This is my blueprint for all of my future maps, not just Gold Rush. And what I want this to be is like a bulletproof system for the pre-game stuff. That's going to include the lobby and things like that as well. But at the moment I'm just focusing on replacing Sefbling's system for capturing players when they first log into the map. So this right here is the spawn area. Inside all of this bedrock is the only place that players can spawn when they first enter the server. So the problem with that before was that you had string and glowstone on the bottom, and what would happen is people would log in, and if they were to click like that, they could break the string and the glowstone underneath them as well, even if they're in adventure mode, because you can break both of those materials. And so it caused the map to break down after a while, which is unfortunate, but they were built on like the very basic command blocks when they first came out. So this is me kind of like trying to update it and make it as secure as possible. So I built it out of bedrock so that no mobs will spawn on it, and also players aren't able to break that. And the walls are 3 high. Now if you have a 1.5 high wall, I think you can jump out of that if another player hits you. But we have a clock down below that's going to teleport players away, so basically there's going to be no way that they're going to be able to punch someone and that person's going to jump over the edge or anything silly like that. So if we come down here, at the back here we have a clock using the item hoppers, and then that signal is transferred to this redstone line so that we can pull that signal multiple times. So rather than building several clocks, we just build all of our other systems off of this. So we've got 2 other ones here, and this third one isn't being used. And we also have glowstone down here to reduce lag, of all things, because the bedrock ceiling makes it dark under here, and so the redstone provides light updates. So by having this glowstone jotted around, it means it doesn't have as many light updates to do. So the first one here in the middle, we are testing for a player at a specific location and a radius of 25 blocks around that player, or sorry, around that location, and the player has to be in mode 2, which is the default mode when they join the server. So somewhere around here there's supposed to be a hole to get up top. Let's just make one. And so that coordinate that you saw, which was 0065, let's just try and find that quickly. -2. So that is right here. So 00 isn't in the middle of a block, it's actually between 4 blocks like this, right on the corner. So this being an odd width, it isn't exactly in the middle, but I've checked that the radius it checks for players goes to every single corner, so it will find a player who spawns in this area. And so another thing that I found out the hard way is that you can't use 0.5 on this, so you can't say test for at x 0.5, it has to be 0, and this is x, y and z, by the way. You can actually use it just like that as well. So that was an annoying lesson to learn, because I spent ages looking at it, why is it not working, and it wasn't until I removed the 0.5 that this finally worked. So what we have after that is a clock. You can see that this is kind of like the control for the clock, so if I remove it, the clock activates like that, and so when the power comes on, the power comes on when this comparator or comparator is activated by this one. So when it finds a player that meets that those requirements even, it then turns off the torch, so the clock gets activated after that. And then what this does is, for the same requirements for a player that we have here, it will apply to all of them. You can see at all there, the same conditions within the same area. It will get them to join the team called pregame. So it detects them, then it makes all players join that team, and then this one over here, running off the same clock again, tests for players in the same area again, but also in team pregame. And then what it does to them is it uses a potion effect, which is number 4, I think, is, I can't remember the name of it, mining fatigue, that's the one. And then the 4 9s just means it runs for an infinite amount of time, and level 3. And basically that means that the players aren't going to be able to break glass or any other block at all. And this was an idea suggested to me by Bling, which was really good, to put the players who aren't in the game yet into a team like this, the pre-game team, and then you apply the negative potion effect to them as well. So it makes it easier to control players that aren't in the game. And then what it does is it just teleports them to some random coordinates. That's the next thing that I need to set up. Where do they go to? How am I going to design the lobby and lay it out? But that is a very good system right there, because they can't be teleported out of the region until they're in the team, and once they're in the team they will be applied with the potion effect and then teleported away. Yeah, so one thing I need to keep in mind is that whenever we're putting them in and out of the pre-game team, that we need to reapply that effect so they don't, or so they aren't able to break any blocks. So up here we have a very basic always day system as well. Set the time to 1000. So whenever it's nighttime, the signal strength will weaken, and when it goes back to this bit here, it turns on the torch and then sets the time back again. So let's go time set 14,000. Like that, it's nighttime, it turns on the torch, and like that, it sets it back to day. And then below it we have another system except for weather. So this will do weather clear. This means if it's raining or not, or if it's a thunderstorm or not, it will just set it to weather like this. And that runs on one of Etho's hopper timers. So another thing that I failed to mention there about the pre-game team as well is, if I just show you this command that I entered a moment ago, this will set that team's friendly fire status to false, meaning they can't hit each other. So when you have your pre-game lobbies, players aren't going to be running around hitting each other. Okay, a lot of time has passed since I last recorded. I've been getting really into this and it's been a little bit complex, but let me explain what I'm doing here first of all. Now everything is being built out of bedrock, which looks really ugly, but I decided to do that as just a template, you know. This is like the template for all my maps, so when you want to come in here and customize the lobby, you would replace all of the bedrock with something that you wanted and, you know, customize it to suit the map. However, building it in bedrock is kind of dull, so I might change that at some point. But anyway, this area here is where you get teleported to from out of that area, which is where you spawn, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of different things here to select before the game. So for example, you can go to the tutorial, you can get a book which gives you more information, you can go to a team selection mode, and a couple of other things as well. And what I decided to work on first was this over here, which is the captain randomizer or selector system. The reason I chose to do that first was because I thought it would be the one I wanted to do the least, basically the most difficult. So I thought I'd dive on in and get that done, so then everything else should feel like more of a breeze. And this has been very difficult. So when you're doing this stuff, what generally happens, at least for me, is that you start, you know, figuring out what you need to do. You build up bits of the system, and as you think you've got all of it down, you see more and more problems emerging when you think about what could go wrong with your system. And so I started out with something that was quite neatly laid out, and you can see it's kind of gotten a little bit chaotic, but it is actually quite simple to follow. So let's start off with the captain randomizer. In fact, no, we won't. It's a lot easier to explain the other system first. If we go underneath here, I've got a universal clock, which I'm going to try and run everything off of, so it means we're using less hoppers, and then that signal gets transferred around here. And so these two things right here, what they're doing is they're testing for a player at a specific location that meets the requirements of being in game mode 2 and in team pre-game. And those two locations from either side are here and there, so it's like a double check on the pressure plate, because the pressure plate also has a torch on the back. And so all of this contributes to this big AND gate, which is this powered redstone here. So only when all the different power sources, which are the two pressure plates, and then these things checking for players, you can see they're powering the back of those blocks. When all of those are met, that's when this gets powered. So when that happens, this thing right here happens. The scoreboard players reset captain system, or underscore captain system. Now underscore captain system is actually a player's name, but what we've done is we've assigned a data value to them so that they will appear on a list, and then we can use a check for. So what? A check for, a test for, but it's slightly different from that. So what it is scoreboard's players list underscore captain system. So if that player has a value assigned to the dummy value, which is called data, then it's going to appear on the list, so it gives us an output. So what this thing on the edge here is a override, if you like, for when the captain selection system is being used. So the first thing we do is reset that, which means there's no longer a data value, and then this thing will stop giving you an output. So then it will contribute to the AND gate, and then if two people stand on the pressure plates, then it's not going to set off the system again. So that's how that works. So you have that right there. Okay, so the other side of that, we then have we teleport the player that was standing in the location with the pressure plate a moment ago to a new location. We do that twice, and those two locations are either side over here. Now on the other side of this, I've put down some repeaters because what I'm thinking of doing is changing their team to something else. So at the moment it's team pre-game. What I might change it to is team captain or something like that. So once they get teleported to the location, the next command block will look for a player at that location and change their team to something like Captain 1 and Captain 2, if that makes sense. And so then after that it says that the captains have been selected, and then after a little pause or delay, it will then teleport everyone else in pre-game mode, wherever they are on the map, to this location over here. So the team selection system itself is something that I'm still thinking about. I think what I want to do is break it down into two modes where the captains can either pick a player one by one, or they can select them at random, or I don't know, I need to give it more thought, so I haven't got that far yet. But the captains are going to stand on either side. All of the players are going to be contained in this area here. We'll probably have some little windows or something, and then players will get teleported into this area when the captain gets to pick or choose what player they want on their team. And then I imagine they'll actually get teleported to another area back here, which is like to confirm that they're on that particular captain's team. So now let me show you how the randomizer system works for the captain selection. When we press this button, we're going to set off all of this circuitry behind it, but what we have here is an AND gate, and like I showed you down the bottom here, we have this command again, which is scoreboard players list _ captain system. And so when the system is not in use, that captain system player has a data value assigned to them, and so this outputs a signal. So when the system is in use, then there's this torch on here, meaning if you press the button, it's completely useless and it doesn't do anything. So the first thing that happens when we press that button is it resets the value for that captain system, and so this stops giving us an output and that torch turns on. Then the next thing it does is it says it's randomizing the captains, and then it picks a random player. Now I think some of the coordinates and stuff here isn't quite finished, but what it's supposed to do is pick a random player from a radius around this block here. I just felt it would be best to pick a player who's sort of standing near the captain selection thing, rather than someone who's, you know, over here not really involved in what's going on. I don't know, I might change that at some point, but it's going to pick out two players and teleport them into this tube here and then the one next to it. And then after it's done that, it gives a message, I think. Okay, I'm not sure if there's something important that's supposed to go in that command block or if I've just forgotten about it. But anyway, our two players get teleported into these two tubes, and the reason that we have these is because if we only have one player in this region or one player on the map and someone's pressed that, then we need to be able to reset the system because we can't just select one captain. So what we have down here is, well, I'm not sure what this is called, but let's say one person gets teleported into this tube here, then they're going to set off that torch, and this is going to unpower around to this block here, and that's powering the redstone, the block. So when it becomes unpowered, this torch here is going to turn on, and it's going to activate these command blocks. So these ones are teleporting the player that was in that tube back out into the lobby, onto that bit there. The second one says not enough players to pick captains, and then last of all it's going to set the data value for the captain system. So that means that this will come back on and you'll be able to try the randomizer again. So the logic here, I think, with this little bit to override that is wrong, because if you have two players coming in, then this is going to unpower for a moment, but the idea is that when the player is standing on the pressure plate, it's powering this block through the repeater, so this won't turn off. However, there is an AND gate on the other side and a teleport function for the two players in there, which I think means that it's possible for that short moment of time where this has turned off to go around and hit this block when the player in that tube is no longer standing on there. So I think the way that we override this is to add some redstone like that. So this can only be unpowered when a player is standing on that block, the one right there. Yeah, so that would definitely do it. Because if that player leaves and there's a little bit unpowered here, then this turns back on and then powers that block again. Okay, cool. So let's finally finish our explanation of this bit up. The last bit is fairly simple. It's the same as before. It picks one player out of the tube, teleports it to the other side, and then we've got these repeaters here again, because I'm thinking of changing their team to something like Captain 1 and Captain 2. At the end there it says Captain selected, and then over on this side it tells you, no, it doesn't tell you, it does exactly what this one down here did and teleports all of the other players in the map into the team selection area. So I've been talking for about 25 minutes now, and all I've built is this just bedrock stuff in a void world. It feels like a very strange format for a show, you know. This looks completely ugly, but there is some cool and interesting logic behind it. However, I'm really interested in your feedback on the series now that we've got started. If you do like the video, please hit the like button, because there is a lot of time and effort going into these maps, and it is really appreciated if you guys want to help me out. But also your comments, your thoughts and opinions as well. I'll be looking forward to reading those, because I want to find out if what I've done in this first episode is good or not, because I'm kind of going into this blindfolded, you know. I haven't really done a map making series before, and as I pointed out, it feels very strange at the end of the episode just to have a load of bedrock floating around that looks really ugly. But hopefully it's been interesting, and in the next episode we will be continuing work on the captain system. But I'm also going to jump into the cube control world as well, I think, and mix things up a little bit and show you what's been going on in there. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.